Bolton is a great community. It pulls together and is looking to the future. And that future has to be one which our children and young people have a say in and are consulted in and is focused with them in mind. In January 2019, there was an estimated 69,780 children and young people aged between 10 to 19 living here, with 20% living in poverty. And in the outer parts of Bolton, such as Farnworth, that is almost doubled, with 38% of children living in poverty. Anyone who regularly comes into contact with children and young people will tell you that the effect of living in poverty can be seen in every part of their life. Loneliness has always been an issue expressed by young people, especially those living in poverty. But not until recently has it been taken seriously as a condition which can have life-damaging effects. Nationally, there is not much research about how it affects young people, with the focus in the past being very much about the older generation. But thanks to funding from Her Majesty's Government and the Co-op Foundation through the Building Connections Youth Strand, we were given the opportunity to go out and ask young people about how it affects them and to what extent. And today we are going to share with you the results. When it comes to our definition of loneliness and the way we have measured it, it is important to highlight that we have used the definition and questions developed by the Office of National Statistics. Anytime from now on, we'll just call them ONS because it is a bit of a mouthful. They worked with the cross-governmental Tackling Loneliness team and a loneliness technical advisory group, which comprised experts in loneliness measurement and analysis. And they agreed a working definition of loneliness, which was published on the 5th of December 2018. The adopted definition states, loneliness is a subjective, unwelcome feeling of lack or loss of companionship. It happens when we have a mismatch between the quantity and quality of social relationships that we have and those that we want. Our research report, which you all have in the packs you've been given, to enable easy comparison, has followed a similar format to the ONS and Children's Society's national project, which explored loneliness amongst children and young people on a national basis. This involved cognitive testing of loneliness questions, which were used in our survey. Detailed information on the national survey can be found on the ONS website.
So how did we go about getting the voices of young people together? As a charity, we made February 2019 Loneliness Month, with all activities having consultation activities in appropriate ways to explore with as wide a number of young people as possible. This also included a Connect With activities event held at Bolton Lads and Girls Club, where various partner organisations showcased what's available across Bolton for young people, whilst also getting feedback. We also launched an online survey, and this had a prize draw as an incentive to take part, and this was promoted through partner agencies and paid social media placements. The consultation explored how often children and young people feel lonely and why, what activities they regularly take part in, how they feel about themselves, their families and their communities, as well as their physical and mental health. While the online survey has given us a lot of statistical information, it's important to highlight these must be read in conjunction with feedback from the other parts of the consultation in order to obtain a rounder view of how it affects their lives. 207 young people completed part or all of the online survey, and a further 230 plus young people were engaged to varying levels through the other consultation activities.
Just how much of an issue is loneliness to children and young people in Bolton? This was measured in two ways. Firstly, they were asked 3 questions about feelings associated with loneliness. How often do you feel you have no one to talk to? How often do you feel left out? And how often do you feel alone? With the response options being never, rarely, sometimes, usually and always. The response for each question was then combined and an average percentage worked out, with a loneliness scores being assigned of 3 for the least lonely and 9 most often lonely. 41% of children or young people scored 3 on the scale, meaning they answered rarely or never lonely when asked about each aspect of loneliness. This compares to 25% with a score of sometimes and 34% who scored the always or usually on the scale.
When asked directly, how often do you feel lonely? 33% reported that they always or usually felt lonely, compared to 28% who sometimes felt lonely and 38% who answered that they never or rarely felt lonely. When comparing answers by age, older young people, 15 plus, were more likely to say they were often lonely than those 14 or younger. Young people aged 14 were the only age group where no respondent said they always or usually felt lonely. The lack of always or usually feeling lonely at the age of 14 could be associated with this being potentially the most stable school year. During this time, there are fewer transitions and curriculum pressures, such as exams and choices for the future. Potentially, this means more time and emphasis is placed on community and relationship building, thereby resulting in stronger bonds and fewer feelings of loneliness. Young men were more likely than young women to say that they never or rarely felt lonely, with nearly half of men reporting that they rarely or never felt lonely, compared with 40% of young women who reported the same. By contrast, young women were more likely, 38%, to say that they always or usually felt lonely than young men, 25%. The most significant difference in responses by gender was 23% of females responded, they always feel lonely, compared with only 5% of males. There's also a small difference between the percentage of males saying they usually feel lonely, 20%, compared with 15% of females. While loneliness is an issue across all postcodes in our survey, there is significant increase of those who answered always lonely the further you move from the centre of Bolton. The jump was from 6 and 7% in BL1 and BL2, up between 17 and 23% in BL3 and BL4. A significant difference was also seen between those who answered rarely or never lonely, with the responses dropping from nearly 50% in BL1 and BL2 to 30% in BL3 and BL4. Young people who described their health as poor or very poor were more likely to report that they were always or usually lonely than other young people. Additionally, young people who reported excellent or very good health were more likely than others to report that they never or rarely felt lonely.
When it comes to the effect of loneliness on mental health, it appears that young people who always feel lonely are more likely to self-harm or think about taking their own life. 48% of those who said they were always lonely answered that they hurt themselves deliberately a few times a week or more. And that compares with 4% of those who answered that they are usually lonely. At the opposite end of the spectrum, only 16% of those who report always being lonely never hurt themselves on purpose, compared to 62% who said they usually feel lonely, 79% who said they were sometimes lonely, and 90% who said they were rarely or never lonely. For me, I think the difference is emphasised even more in young people who admit to thinking about ending their own lives. 68% of those who report always being lonely answered that they think about ending their own life a few times a week or more, compared with 20% who said they usually feel lonely. To me, the two statistics are most striking out of all of the research, as it shows that in order to work towards Bolton's vision of no more suicides, loneliness has to be taken seriously amongst young people.
Social media was heavily mentioned by young people as a tool for dealing with loneliness. However, from the survey results, it's possible to question whether too much social media has a negative effect on loneliness. If young people suffering from loneliness use social media more as a tool to overcome loneliness, this is one of the many potential explanations for significant differences. However, we believe that the results suggest that while social media can help decrease loneliness, too much time will have the reverse effect. 60% of young people who use social media for 5 hours a day or more report usually or always feeling lonely, with a similar smaller number, 44%, reported for those who engage for 4 hours a day. This is more significant when you see that between 20 and 25% of those who use social media for between 1 and 3 hours a day usually feel lonely, and 13% of those who spend 0 hours on social media. Bullying is an issue for young people, and our survey results suggest that being bullied regularly increases feelings of loneliness in young people. Young people who are being bullied on a weekly or more basis are nearly twice as likely to feel lonely than those who are bullied less often or not at all. A common comment by young people was, "We just need someone to listen to us and to talk to." This was expressed both as a cause of loneliness and a solution. When asked, who would you talk to if you're worried about something, 15% of young people selected nobody. However, 64% responded parent or guardian, 22% selected teacher, 13% selected youth worker, and 3% social worker, potentially highlighting a lack of positive adult role models in the lives of young people. When this is examined in conjunction with what would help you in the next 12 months feel better about yourself, this becomes a very real factor influencing young people's loneliness in Bolton. 44% of respondents answered someone who will listen to you, and 37% said meeting new people and making new friends.
It's important to say that throughout the consultation, young people observed the availability of some good activities. However, for various reasons, they were not always felt to be accessible. The most common reason for not accessing activities were anxiety or fear of crowds, nervous or anxious about meeting other people, no one to go with, and then of course financial and transport issues were also a significant issue raised in discussions, alongside the very honest view that they simply do not enjoy socialising. For young people, being lonely is not about how many people around them there are. Schools and colleges were said to be one of the loneliest places by many of the young people. As we've already heard, bullying or fear of being bullied was a common issue, highlighted as a cause of feeling lonely when not necessarily alone. In particular, young people with special educational needs expressed feeling susceptible to bullying. Young people with SEND and or mental health issues also highlighted the unintended outcomes of protective supportive mechanisms from families and professionals, namely, they often lead to feelings of isolation and loneliness and a fear of taking risks.
One example of support mechanisms actually increasing loneliness was highlighted by a small number of 11 to 13-year-olds who shared that in their school, when they admit to their teachers they're feeling lonely, they're sent to a buddies bench. Someone else is then sent over and forced to spend time with them, and they felt that this made them feel more isolated, made it harder for them to admit how they were feeling, and increased their feelings of loneliness, despite understanding why the school thought they'd have.
Young people expressed that loneliness meant many things for them at different times, including when their friends turn on them, when they are rejected, and when relationships, both romantic and non-romantic, break down, meaning that you will be on your own. Loneliness is also often seen to signify the end of something that has been consistent in their lives. This may be due to deaths of family members, friends, or even pets.
There are so many transitional periods of children and young people, both in and out of the education system, that there's often a lack of long-term, stable relationships or friendships. Moreover, young people have to make new friends on an annual basis and can give up on making the effort, as there may be no point in making friends if they won't be around in a few months. A feeling of can't be bothered is only enhanced when they are distanced from the few friends they have, either physically or mentally, by moving them to different tables, classes, year groups, schools, and in some cases, towns. Families moving home due to the grades they're expected to get or the part of Bolton in which they live.
Young people also felt that they communicated and connect using mobile phones and social media more than talking face to face. Therefore, removing their ability to connect and communicate is a source of loneliness. If they are unable to share their feelings or opinions, stay up to date with the trends, and end up isolated and lonely if they are unable to access social media for long periods. Whilst this may be seen as simplistic, to young people, they often value and trust their online friends more than they do their school colleagues and adults that are in their own lives. Thus, the inability to connect with them for a significant length of time can have a significant effect on how lonely they feel. Some young people expressed a feeling that nobody really cares, highlighting how clubs are being closed, that they are being blamed for everything, and that why should we care when no one cares about us or what we think. While this view was accepted by some as a legitimate feeling, it was felt that Bolton has been particularly good at keeping places open for them. However, they still felt more was needed, not less.
Young people said they avoid and manage loneliness by going to places where they feel safe or know they have established secure relationships. For many, this is with parents and guardians, with the focus often being on mum or another family member. Youth clubs or centres were also named as a common place of safety, especially those with formal mentoring or listening services, where there's someone specific who offers them time to share their feelings and problems with, without a fear of being judged. Getting together with other young people, not necessarily friends, on the streets where they can drink and smoke together to feel less lonely or forget how we feel, was a negative avoidance technique that came up on several occasions, as did self-harm, getting drunk, getting high. It's important to know, however, that when these were mentioned as ways they managed their loneliness, there was an awareness that they were avoiding a problem or an issue, and that they were temporary solutions or a way of belonging to a group, even if on a temporary basis. Being creative was also a tool for managing loneliness, whether music, art, drama or videos. Many young people felt that creativity enabled them to express their feelings without having to use words, getting a feeling that they don't necessarily understand out of their heads, while also connecting and sometimes making friends with other creative people. Social media was overwhelmingly regarded as a positive tool to help them connect with friends from all over, enabling them to talk to people who are also feeling lonely or don't judge and accept the way we feel. Friends and friendships groups across social media are often considered a second family, resulting in sharing with online brothers and sisters and creating a community of supporters regardless of what they're going through. The older young people are more aware of the risks associated with this, for example, being catfished, etc. However, they feel the benefits outweigh the risks, as no one really understands.
In the online survey, young people were asked an open-ended question. What would help young people in Bolton suffering from loneliness? No example answers were mentioned to ensure that the answers given were the young people's own. And there were 126 responses, loosely categorised as follows. 29% talked about activities such as sport, drama, music, and the need for hobbies and interests to be developed. 28% spoke about the importance of having more or strengthening current existing community groups and clubs. 19% shared the view that more listeners and or counsellors were needed to enable them to have people to talk to. 12% highlighted specifically the need for more youth provision across Bolton and or for the provision that currently exists to be better promoted. Other answers that do not fall into any of the above categories included better shops, use of social media more, trusted adults, and better advertising. Overall, the feedback from young people about what was needed to support young people across Bolton focused primarily on people and places. People to listen to them, people to socialise with them, people to care for them, and places to go that they are safe, fun, or provide what they need when they need it. They felt that in Bolton, mental health was becoming easier to talk about, but that loneliness was not really discussed for fear of more rejection. This must change, and more people need to know about the activities that already exist to help them, because the young people said they aren't easy to find. In our report, we have highlighted 9 calls for action, and hopefully you've all been given some packs that contain the full report with a lot more information about some of the statistics we've talked about, but also other statistics that cover many more things. We believe these 9 things need to happen in order to us to enable the many issues brought up by the young people. They're on the screen and in the packs. At this point, we're going to bring some flip chart and pen around to each table, and we would like you in your tables to take a few minutes just to discuss the things you've heard, and if you've got common questions, write down common questions, but also write down the things and ideas that you think need to happen in order to tackle some of these things. And if you're representing an agency, maybe consider what sort of things your agencies could do to make a specific action.
The Connect project seems really exciting and positive. I'm really excited that it's kind of tackling youth loneliness. At the Proud Trust we work with lots of LGBT young people for whom loneliness is a key problem in their lives. So the Connect project seems to be really useful in addressing that. It's really positive that it's run by youth workers, it's connected to other services, and it's a holistic service which will kind of address all areas of the young person.
The things I've learned today about young people's loneliness is that it's really important to take note of it. It's not just something that you can leave because it's not a big need, it's not an immediate problem to deal with. It can be life-threatening if you leave it. So what I'm going to take away from this practice is to take more time to listen and encourage communication.
So it's the start of the work. I think that's recognised. There's lots of stuff for services, certainly service to do, and it'd be great if maybe one of the actions has been a little bit more joined up with some of the statutory services in delivering it.
So definitely some of these call to actions we're going to take back for Bolton CCG and see what we can do to influence the rest of the system and hopefully get some really good outcomes for young people.